What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Rare Games with your host, as always, K-Mac Time. Today we're going to be discussing one of my all-time favorite handheld systems, which is the Game Boy Original and Game Boy Color. I kind of grouped them together. We're going to be looking at some of the rarest, most expensive games ever made for this console or system, whatever you want to call it. Some of the greatest games ever were made for this handheld, and I'm going to go ahead and start out with a runner-up. This one doesn't make the list because these games are not rare, but they are holding their value pretty well. And of course, I'm talking about the original Pokemon games, red, blue, yellow. You can even throw gold, silver, and crystal in there if you have a green version. They run anywhere from $15 to $20 if they're in good condition, but they're not that rare, but they're just really, really good. We're going to jump into the list, though. Our first game is Extreme Ghostbusters, which is an action game based upon the animated series of the same name. You control any of the 4 Ghostbusters and try to capture and destroy ghosts in New York City. Now, this game, some say it was released in the United States, some say it wasn't. Either way, it's still super rare and only sells once or twice a year. A used copy of this will run you anywhere from $35 to $45. Not any sales of it new in box anytime recently. Very rare indeed. Our next game is Felix the Cat, which is a 2D platformer based upon Felix the Cat, the cartoons. The game was super hard on some levels, as on air, land, and sea, and even underwater levels, making it a very, very cool game. This game actually is one of the rarest games to find for the original Game Boy. Not really sure why. I mean, there really wasn't that many produced. Not a very popular game, but definitely one of the rarest. A used copy of this game will run you from $35, but a brand new copy in box will run you $500+. Our next game is Metal Gear Solid, which is a stealth action game with a plot and gameplay that is totally different from the PS1 game that has the same title. The plot is an alternate sequel to the original Metal Gear and is not part of the main storyline. Metal Gear for the Game Boy was rated one of the highest rated Metal Gear games of all time, a very, very popular game, which is why it explains a high price, which a used copy of this game will run you anywhere from $25 to $45. A new copy of this game will anywhere from $100 to $150. Very, very cool game. Our next game is Kid Dracula, which is a platformer, which is a parody spin-off of the Castlevania series. You play as a kid version of Dracula who must save his fathers by using items and beat a boss named Galamoth. This game, however, being a spin-off, did not sell very well. It was looked down upon in the gaming community as Castlevania rip-off, and as doing such, it didn't sell very well, making it one of the rarest games today. You can pick up a used copy of this game for about $35. Next up on the list is Dragonheart, which is a first-person role-playing game loosely based off the Dragonheart movie. You move around in first person, but the battles take place in a side view. The game is moderately rare, but not impossible to find. It's one of the cheapest games to find on this list, brand new. But a used copy will still run you for around $30, and a new copy will run you anywhere from $100 to $175, brand new in the box. Still a very rare game, though. Our next game is Mr. Do, which is very, very similar to Dig Dug. You dig tunnels around and try to get as many points as possible by killing monsters and gathering fruit. The game was first released in 1982 on arcades, but didn't get a Game Boy version for almost another decade. It's one of the rarest licensed Game Boy games of all time. Also, the Super Nintendo version of this game is super rare. So a very, very rare game. Used copy run you for about $40, and a new in-box will run you about $350+. Our next rare game is Space Station Silicon Valley, which is a portable version of the game that was also with the same title that was released for the Nintendo 64. You play as a robot or something like that, or as a dog, as you see in this gameplay, with a microchip and something like that. I don't know, it's a really confusing game, but it's also pretty rare. The game was developed by a studio that would later become Rockstar North and develop the Grand Theft Auto series, which is pretty cool. But a new copy of this game will run you in box probably about $300, but a used price is probably about $30, $35. Next up is one of the most valuable Game Boy games of all time. I could not even find gameplay of this game, is how rare this one is. This was released by Wisdom Tree and contains a full Niv Bible and 20 extra levels of Game of Joshua of Battle of Jericho. It's basically a Christian game. It was only sold in Christian bookstores or through mail-in orders, making it why it's so rare. Game, like I said, the game was unlicensed by Nintendo. A copy of the game with the manual sells for about $550, but a sealed version of the game has sold for up to $7,000. Very, very expensive game. Our next game is Resident Evil Gaiden, which is a survival horror game for the Game Boy Color. Unlike other games that were Resident Evil games, it is a top-down and battles are fought in first person. You deal damage by timing button presses with the movement of the reticle on screen. The game was released a year after the Game Boy Advance was already out and people had forgotten about Game Boy Color games, so it didn't sell very well, making it a super rare game worth about $40 used and about $150 new. Next up is Cool World, which is an action platformer for the original Game Boy. The game is based on the Cool World movie and comics. He plays Frank Harris, a police officer in the movie, who must collect coins and shoot Doodles, the bad guys in the game. The game is not extremely rare, but does sell for a high price. A new copy of the game has never been sold, as far as I could tell, but a used copy of this game will run you about $40 to $50. Very kind of rare game. Kind of cool though. Next up is Castlevania Legends, which is an action platformer and is considered one of the worst Castlevania games ever made. In fact, the game's producer is quoted as saying, "Legend remains something of an embarrassment to the series." In spite of this embarrassment, collectors are still willing to pay top dollar for the game. A new in-box rated 90+ version of this game recently sold for over $12,500. Now that's new in-box, mint condition. A used copy of this game will run you about $50, but man, $12,500 for a new copy of this is insane. Our next game is Mega Man 4. This game is not ultra rare, but because there's such a huge fan base for the Mega Man series, it is highly collectible and highly sought after. This game was really cool, got really good reviews, and it's kept its price throughout the years. Like I said, very good fan base for this game. A used copy of this game will run you about $55. A new in-box copy will run you somewhere from $800 to $1,000. Very cool game. And again, the next game is Mega Man 5. Again, the same thing. These games really held their value. This one's a little more rare as it did kind of come later in the Game Boy Color's game life cycle. It was the last Mega Man game ever developed for Game Boy Color. And a used copy of this sells for about $60. And a new in-box copy can sell anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500. The collectors out there for the Mega Man stuff eat this stuff up. Our second most rarest game is Spuds Adventure, which is an action-adventure game with heavy RPG elements. You play as a potato who must save the tomato princess in a tower. The game is divided up into multiple levels, which contain puzzles, mazes, and a combination of both. The game was developed by Atlas and received very small print run, just like most Atlas games do, and has never been reprinted, so that's why it remains very rare today. A new copy would run you somewhere between $700 to $1,000, and a used copy is anywhere from $55 to $75. And finally, our most rare game for the Game Boy Color or Game Boy is, of course, Shantae, which is a platformer where you play as a heroine who uses her hair to attack her enemies. It was very well received critically, and a sequel was later released for the DSiWare. The game was released at the very end of the Game Boy Color's life cycle, a full year after the Game Boy Advance had been released. So because of this, Capcom printed the game in limited quantities, and it's very hard to find. A used copy of this game will run you $150 for it used. Is how rare this game is. And new in box is anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. Very rare game. Very cool stuff indeed. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys could go ahead and drop a like, it'd be very much appreciated, guys. If you guys are new around here, you guys can feel free to subscribe to my channel. And also in the comment section, let me know what should be next. I'm going to stick with the Nintendo. I want to know if you guys want to see rare Game Boy Advance games, rare NES games, Super Nintendo games, whatever you guys want to see in Nintendo rare games. Let me know down in the comment section, and I'll make it happen for you guys. So guys, have a great day. Game the fuck on. I'll see you next time, guys. Peace out.